Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to have mastered the art of taking without ever giving back? Are leeches and bedbugs any really different than scheming uncles and entitled families? You be the judge today in the rLounge. Up first, a drug-addicted uncle takes give and take to a whole new level. Blocked my leech of an uncle, but can't stop him for asking for money from a 100-year-old man who can't say no. I'm at my wit's end with my drug addict maternal uncle. I've written about him here once before. My maternal grandfather, age 100 years, 10 months, lived with him in his apartment until March 2022. His living conditions were disgusting. Bed so full of bed bugs. My grandfather was covered in bites and his bedspread literally covered in streaks of blood. Spent all day sitting in a ratty old vinyl or leather chair that gave him thick, scaly white rashes on his arms. They looked like the white parts on humpback or right whales. Lost so much weight, his clothes were falling off of him. My uncle doesn't believe in paying bills, so he let them shut off the cable and Wi-Fi. If I had gotten my grandfather an Android with my own money on my unlimited data plan, he would have literally had nothing to do, literally all day every day. The apartment was a cesspool full of fleas and gnats, not quite sure what they were. Dirty clothes and boxes of pancake mix and dusty cans my uncle picked up over and over again from the food bank just so they could sit there, never being used. I was finally able to move my grandfather out in March of 2022. My uncle didn't approve, but there was no way he could stop me. It wasn't like he could let cops or social workers see his living conditions. The rest of my family, and I assumed our grandfather, wouldn't be around much longer. But it turned out the only reason he wasn't eating and lost weight was because someone kept spending all his money on drugs. All I know is that it's snortable white powder, and telling him they couldn't afford food. Out of that environment, he ate normally, gained weight, and shows no signs of deteriorating. Since he now lives in an environment that doesn't need to be hidden, I enrolled him in the VA home health care program. So he gets medical care and vaccines at home, and a home health aide coming 3 days a week to do bathing, shaving, and other tasks. We had to leave everything behind because of the bed bugs, so I spent $950 of my own money on clothes and furniture for him. And my brother bought him a TV and a set of shelves for it. Everything is good except for one problem. My uncle uses my grandfather like an ATM and treats my grandfather's bank account like it's his own. They're both on Social Security, plus my grandfather gets his war pension and dividends from a small amount of stock. He still has my grandfather's debit card on his Grubhub account and uses it to order from them 1 to 2 times a day. Starting 10 to 15 days into every month, he does that thing where he asks for small amounts, $10, $11, $12, $20, 1 to 2 times every day. Cash App. One month, he took a total of $789. This month, $609. And that's for my grandfather alone. He's done it to everyone in my family. At this point, I think everyone but my father, who's not even related to him, has reached their breaking point and refuses all requests now. My grandfather is not as sharp as someone 50 plus years younger than him, but he doesn't have dementia or anything else severely wrong with his mind. He recognizes everyone, maintains conversations with no problems, knows where he is and what's going on around him, takes his meds on his own every morning. I divide them out in a pill tray every week, reads magazines, letters, etc., and comprehends what he's reading. He can't write solely because of limited function of his right hand. Browses the web on his Android and answers calls. I wasn't able to teach him how to make calls, though. Uses his walker to travel between his bedroom and the bathroom with no problem. He's not mentally incompetent, he just can't say no. But the only reason he has so much money to give is because he's living with me. I'm a live-in caregiver for a friend with a spinal cord injury. My friend is the homeowner, and I'm paid by the state for caring for him. I also have a full-time office job, and pay the majority of living expenses for all 3 of us. He let my grandfather move in because he wanted me to stay living with him and caring for him rather than move out. For over a year, I stuck to my plan of not charging my grandfather anything, but my uncle just took it all. A few months ago, I started, with my grandfather's consent, letting him pay the phone bill I'd been paying for both of us for 3.5 years, and the water bill since I refused to subsidize my uncle's drug habit by paying all my grandfather's utilities, so he has more to give my uncle. Since Cash App is too complex for my grandfather, I'm the one who has to send the money to my uncle. I blocked my uncle on my phone, so he only gets money if he calls my grandfather while I'm home and near enough for him to tell me to send the money. Barely made a dent in the demands. My grandfather is still getting free housing, internet, electricity, and gas. Also, my uncle can take everything from him. My grandfather wouldn't have been able to get groceries with his own money the last week of December if he hadn't gotten some gift cards for Christmas. It makes me sick. I could stop it all by just reporting his debit card as lost and getting him a new one and refusing to send any more money in Cash App. But my grandfather doesn't want that. He wants to say yes every time. The only legal option I can think of is to take more money from him to cover some of my monthly household bills, so he has less to choose to send to the man who almost killed him, and less of my money is funding said man. If I had just refused my grandfather's instructions to send his money somewhere, he'll get mad. But I can now live with that. That prospect has finally become less unbearable than dealing with my uncle is. But what if my uncle reports me for financial abuse or elder abuse or something? He'll do anything to get money from his dad. He even lied to me when I first moved him out that my grandfather still owes him half the rent every month because his name was on the lease. It wasn't. It never was. Confirm with the building management. I wonder if I can report my uncle for financial abuse when all he's doing is asking and being told yes. Asking someone to do a welfare check on my uncle that could result in him getting evicted or arrested would likely only make things worse for my grandfather, since he would no doubt just use that as an excuse to ask for more. I need a way to refuse instructions regarding money from someone with most of his mental faculties intact without giving an outside party grounds for accusing me of something malicious, unless me not wanting to indirectly fund my uncle by funding my grandfather counts as malicious. Edit. Thank you so much for all the responses, everybody. I truly was surprised at how fast they came in. There's too many for me to respond to everyone, so I want everybody to know you've been read and appreciated. I've decided to call his VA social worker, explain what's going on, and ask if they can recommend a lawyer or advocate, or someone to advise us on things like making me power of attorney or sending my uncle an ultimatum-style letter. Sometimes a warning is enough to scare people off their behavior, especially when they have things to hide. I might wait until after I make some spreadsheets of all the money my uncle has taken from him and all the expenses I've paid for him. That will take a while, but I think would be preferable to have ready from the start. I saved the pictures of his living conditions that I moved him out of. To those worrying about my uncle visiting, we do live in the same metro area, but he lost his car years ago, and he's destroyed his health. In some of his angrier moments, my grandfather has actually described how the medicine my uncle takes causes him to amble around like a zombie, how my grandfather would call his name and he wouldn't respond, how he'd stand in a doorway staring blankly into space. When my uncle fell in October of 2021 and had to go to the hospital, my grandfather actually told me it was because he took something that made him pass out while standing up. When I remind Pop of such things now, he claims he doesn't remember any of that or telling me about it. But I truly think he's lying because he doesn't want to talk about it, not forgetting. Sorry, that was a long way of illustrating how my uncle can barely walk. As far as I know, he just walks to the grocery store and the food bank. He looks like a bearded skeleton. I don't know how he's still alive. My grandfather has twice told me, he's going to die before I do. And I agree. Bottom line, he's not getting on a bus or on an Uber, and he's not coming here. He's physically incapable of it. Now let's see how the community responds. First up, this is elder abuse. Go to the courts and be appointed Grandpa's guardian and get a new bank card. You can also have it reported stolen. Have Grandpa change the address on the account. You can do many of these things online. I do for my mom. The OP replies, I feel I would have to get some sort of guardianship in order to legally be covered from accusations when doing all of it. Another person responds, at this point, you probably have to petition the courts for financial guardianship. It allows you to control his money, but he can still make some decisions on his own. Most judges will understand that he has his full mental capacity intact, but needs someone to protect his financial interests if he is unable to say no. Hopefully, this helps a little. Also, start documenting everything. Every transaction, every text message, and specifically photos. Show his living conditions before and after his financial statements. All Cash App transfers, everything. The more you can document, the better your chances are to convince a judge that he cannot handle his own finances. If he is at the point that the inability to say no is preventing him from supporting himself, then it's time for someone to step in and make those decisions for him. The OP replies, this is the only issue. If the courts are designed to handle situations like that as opposed to full mental incompetence, that would be exactly what we need. I guess I'll have to look for a lawyer to tell me where to get started after the holidays are over because I can't take it anymore. Thank you very much for laying it out that way. I think the only way to protect your grandpa and his well-being is to do what the comments have said. You must document everything and take legal action. Surely, if you document your uncle's abuse to your grandpa, both physically and financially, you'll gain guardianship. Due to his living conditions, you should have called someone right away. Cops and social workers should have absolutely been made aware of it. It would have worked out in your favor. In a way, you were only enabling your uncle's behavior. What do you think? What would you have done? Next up, these guests stretch the definition of family to accommodate a few extra bodies. 12 entitled people in an Airbnb designed for 6. Cost me $600. Thought you might enjoy my second thirsty witch story. I posted previously here about a client of mine with a similar story, but this is the origin story that happened years before that other post. My wife and I own a mountain cabin, and a few years ago, we decided to put it up on Airbnb. The place is a remote A-frame on 3 acres of forested land with awesome views, and it's about 30 minutes from a ski resort. This was our first Airbnb, so we were pretty cautious with everything. For example, looking at guests' past reviews, asking them about their trip to make sure this place would suit them, etc. Everything was going pretty well until the entitled people booked the whole weekend for Thanksgiving. They told us they were driving out from Texas. Mom, dad, 3 little kids, and 2 dogs. Being that this was our first holiday rental, we went all out for them. We set a turkey to defrost in the fridge for them and left out a snack platter and a couple bottles of champagne. They arrived Sunday night, and the next few days, all hell breaks loose. I get a 6 a.m. call Monday morning. The whole family is puking and sick as hell. They all had altitude sickness. The cabin is 11,000 feet above sea level, so this happens, especially when you aren't in shape and just came from sea level. I did warn the guests about this ahead of time. So on the phone talking them through everything, where the urgent care is, what to do, etc. By day 2, things have calmed down. Tuesday. However, then I take a look at our water cistern gauge, remote monitored. This house has what we call a slow well recovery system. Basically, at some times of the year, the well might only produce around 60 gallons a day instead of the usual 300 plus. So, we have a 500-gallon water storage system that helps smooth out the demand curves. Basically, once the tank goes below 40%, the well starts pumping, and if the well goes dry, a timer gets started, and it will pump again in 3 hours until the tank is topped up. Full description in listing and guidebook. This system is more than adequate for 6 guests. Also, the house only has 1 bathroom and a 40-gallon hot water tank, so it's not like anyone can take long showers. It's all in the listing. It's a rustic place. Tactically speaking, we just ask guests to conserve water, but the system is fully automatic and no one even knows it's there. Well, after 48 hours, I checked our tank monitor and see it's around 35% full, which means the guests used all of the storage, plus what the well can produce in 2 days. I'm estimating nearly 700 gallons of water. I literally thought something must be broken because there was no way in hell 2 parents and 3 little kids used that much. Like, perhaps the well fuse popped and they got nothing from the well. So I'm now freaking out, thinking this nice family is going to be out of water on Thanksgiving. I called her and politely asked that they conserve water and had them reset the system, aka turn the breaker off and on. So I basically said I'd monitor it for 3 hours, and if I didn't see the levels make progress, I'd get a water truck in. This would literally be the first, as I've never needed to do it. Her response? Sounds good, but hurry because we drink a lot of water. How weird of a comment is that? As if 5 people drinking a gallon a day, max, somehow equates to the hundreds of gallons missing from the system. Well, there is really no change in the water level after 3 hours, so I get on the phone to book a water truck. And as it's now 1 day before Thanksgiving, it's just not happening. So I now need to figure out how to transport water to this house. I live 1.5 hours away. I went to Farm and Tractor Supply and bought a 275-gallon tank that would fit in my truck, plus hoses and pumps. Then drive up there, figure out where I can buy bulk water from, and go to the house. I finally get there around 4 p.m., and the guests are out, but gave me permission to go inside and test things out. AKA, I wanted to make sure the system is working. It was, so they really did use that. I went inside and found 2 huskies in a crate who had crapped themselves, and it was all over. The place smelled gross. The owners said they would be back and would clean it up. At this point, I've been working on this for 8 hours. I'm sick, it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I'm now hooking up the transfer pump. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving and I still need to get to my parents' house, thankfully only 30 minutes from the cabin. I start pumping, then I see their car pull up, and they are waiting at the bottom of the driveway. Knowing they have small kids, I go down and say hi and let them know they can go on in, and I'll be done in about 40 minutes. They started to act real odd at this point, but go ahead in. Then I saw 2 more cars on the side of the road around the switchback. Big steep S-bend in front of the house, and it clicks. The reason I just did all this work and spent nearly $600 on supplies is because these people had 12 people staying there. If you all are curious as to how I didn't notice when I went inside, I didn't snoop around, I just went straight to the breaker box and then went to the crawl space where the tanks are. Also, the smell from the dogs was just horrid, so I got out as fast as possible. At this point, I went up to the front door, knocked and said, "Be honest with me, how many people do you have staying here?" Her, 9. I could see she was lying, but even that number was over our legal capacity based on our permit. You realize that this listing is for 6 people.
Well, there are beds for more people and the kids have a crib, and we didn't know our family wanted to come when we booked it.
The loft does have a pull-out couch, so best case, there are sleeping for 8 adults, but I'm guessing people were sleeping on the couches as well. But that. I just spent $600 plus a full day to solve a problem that was actually not a problem.
Well, the house should have water.
The house system was designed and tested for 6. The stated number on the listing, I don't know how you think it's okay to have this many people here.
We could leave, but it would have to be tomorrow, and we expect a refund because we don't want to drive down these roads in the dark with our kids.
It's maybe 6 p.m. at this point. No cell service at the cabin, so I went to town and got on the Wi-Fi at the local bar and called Airbnb. At this point, I had been hosting for 3 months and had no idea how to handle the situation. But now I was more afraid that they would damage something in the house, so Airbnb canceled the reservation and asked them to leave the house. I was able to recover around $200 for a deep cleaning on the house, and they didn't get a refund. On a funny note, at the beginning of this year, I started a hot tub service company, and water trucking is a service we offer, and I used some of that equipment to get started. Whoa, it's some feat to hide an additional 6 people plus animals. Honestly, why try to squeeze people into a house? Why not get a bigger place? Maybe to save a few extra bucks. It seems like Airbnb is dangerous for things like this and people who like to play the system. But after it all, it looks like karma took care of them with the sickness. That's quite the Thanksgiving weekend. Do you have a horror story with Airbnb? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for following along today on rLounge. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to share regarding today's content, we want to hear it. Until next time.